Hello everyone, Linker here, and today we're going to look at my signature item tier list. Took lots of work, I'm pretty excited for this one. It's going to be a tier list on endgame campaign focus, assuming you have access to the relevant furniture and tree levels. So if you're here for a quick decision rather than the meta overview, skip ahead and listen to the commentary on the relevant hero. For each hero, I'll break down the signature item effects, explain why it's ranked the way it is, and provide the most important signature item benchmark to hit. Now, the benchmark isn't a necessity, but rather a quick guideline for what is the best value point if you plan to use that hero. Note the benchmark does not take into account hero viability, but rather signature item viability is what's at focus here. The tiers are divided into 3 groups of 3 for good, average, and bad items for meta, average, and underwhelming heroes. Lastly, I want to mention that while I may sometimes mention the position of a hero within a tier, it's not necessarily reflective of the order of the heroes within that tier. So without further ado, let's get started with the very bottom, and bottom will have the underwhelming signature item for underwhelming heroes, starting with Baden. Baden, his signature item is going to benchmark at level 1, making him spawn a phantom once every 4, scaling now to 3 phantoms die. It also makes his phantoms more tanky than they used to be. Ever since he got nerfed and his clones got limited, they no longer do the kind of stuff that you see right over here. So at high campaign deficit, it's hard for him to summon more than 1 or 2 clones, making his signature item not very useful. Next, we're gonna have Shemira. Shemira is going to benchmark at level 20, where her signature item makes her deal more damage when the enemy team has less heroes alive. And at the end game, she finds it very hard to carry, because when she carries, she's usually heavily supported, meaning she's supposed to be the damage dealer for the whole team. So this SI does not help her much. I put it at level 20 because newer players might find this early game value out of that investment, but still not a hero that you want to rely on for the late game. Alright, and the next one we're going to have is Thane. Also finding its place over here. This benchmark is at level 30. He deals more damage after not taking damage for a timer of 3 seconds. The timer ladder becomes individual for each enemy, so more enemies that haven't attacked him, he can attack them back with higher damage. So this means that his ult and vanish give him immunity frames to stack those different timers, so it still doesn't do enough for him. He's very vulnerable to CC, which he'll most likely take in those high endgame campaign levels. Lastly, for the last hero in the very bottom, we're gonna have, you probably guessed it, this one is a personal favorite menu. Where is she? Raine. Where can we find Raine? Raine. While she recovers health and energy, half of that is recovered into the strongest ally. That's the benchmark at level 10. She also provides a shield, but the shield is extremely squishy. Only 180% of her attack whenever it triggers. Health and energy aren't enough to make her important enough, so eventually she ends up as an underwhelming hero with an underwhelming signature item. For the next section, average signature items for underwhelming heroes, has 7 heroes in that section of the list, and we're going to start off with the one that I want to talk about. It's Kaz, and it's a very special one. Kaz gets dodge and crit at the start of the fight, then fade over time. She's going to benchmark at level 1 at level 30 of her SI, exactly for those reasons. At level 1 she starts getting the fading crit and dodge, very very crucial, but at level 30 she can also dodge magic attacks if her dodge hits certain thresholds. So it's great furniture, especially for a dodge niche. For example, it would make Ezio completely broken. However, it doesn't address her core issues like her scaling. It's just not good enough. So, like Kaz, her SI works best when she is ahead, which is not the situation in the campaign, which is why this is not ranking any higher. Next is gonna be Warek. Here is Warek right here. Warek is gonna recover health when he can't stack his buff any further, and that's gonna start from level 1, scaling to later buff his attack when buff can't be stacked anymore. So as he stacks the carnal rage buffs, it happens pretty fast, more fast than you'd guess. He gets decently tanky and has some offense, but the issue with him is that his initial scaling is bad, so the SI does not add enough. It does have mostly this defense debuff, which does not synergize with this. It's also CC immune, a very special hero, but sadly the signature item, while it is pretty interesting, does not fit into the right criteria to make him the great hero that he could otherwise be. Now, Drez. Here is Drez. Drez is going to be a very interesting hero to look at. He has a very big shield upon ult. Now you might be asking, 800%, why is he any higher? The issue with Drez is that it's his attack ratings and he's very slow. So while that could provide half of his health in a shield, it takes him ulting to do that. It takes him time. It does not address the issues where he's too slow to provide. Next, we're going to see Torne fighting him pretty fast, redeeming myself over here. He gets attack and defense upon building the whip, scaling to provide CC immunity and life leech up to 3 times. So it's incredible stats, but just like Drez, it's very slow. Drez is going to benchmark at 10, I'm sorry for that, and Torne is going to benchmark at 30, where he gains the CC protection, which makes him very, very strong, albeit a very slow hero, so not the top end of those signature items. Next is going to be Isabella. Isabella is gonna, I'm just gonna start talking over it while I find them. Isabella is gonna increase her ult casting speed, cast those balls, add up damage. It does not address her weak spots where she gets bursted fast, does not have any kind of immunity, but when she does get to ult, this is what makes her sometimes more viable than Shemira in the very late game. A pretty decent sight to see. Next is gonna be Rigby. Rigby, not a good hero, but decent SI, extra damage and stuns in the fire. It's nice, but just does not do enough. This hero does not bring enough to the table. Mild CC that he does, but just not enough even with his SI to justify any higher positioning. Next, we're gonna have Grezhul. Now, Grezhul gets extra skeletons and he can also heal as those skeletons die. So Grezhul, a very interesting hero, useful mostly in the Twisted Realm, if I'll find him anytime soon over here. Super good hero in the Twisted Realm because of the way that he works. Here he is. Gets this attack scaling from the enemies, but in the campaign he's used for magic defense mostly. So because the SI and the magic defense kind of work differently and not very good in tandem, he's not any amazing hero, but he is good, like decent SI for the campaign. It's the underwhelming hero that he is, unlike the Twisted Realm where he can really shine, and that could make a difference in his SI. Now here we're going to go for good signature items for Underwhelming Hero, and here we're going to have 6 different heroes. So starting off, we'll have Seirus. Seirus is a very special SI. It guarantees him extra maximum health, not healing him initially, as well as healing later that scales off of the base health that he receives. So it's a great SI, enabling his passive and making him tank better, but still not good enough to make him viable. Still a hero that's better from ahead, kind of a cast syndrome where this does not work that great in the campaign. Next, we're gonna have Solise. Her signature item really enables her. Buff specters as they attack more than one enemy and get more health. She deals much more damage with it, so crucial for her. Sadly, not the most viable hero still. Next, we're going to look at a hero whose signature item makes them viable, but just not viable enough on their own. And it's going to be Oscar, anytime that I'll find him. He has a very specific niche. He stops Athalia. Now, for that, he needs his plus 30 to work. So the benchmark for her is going to be the plus 30, Seirus plus 10, Solise is 1. So Oscar, having his plus 30, knocks in stuns, important for his niche, stopping Athalia from engaging after her invade, which otherwise she would even after he pushes her. Next, we're going to have Vurk, which benchmarks at 30. Vurk has a very strong signature item even after his buff. A good step in the right direction. Long stuns and the traps make it so people regret investing in him less. And his SI buffs his damage and makes him generate much more energy. So crucial for him. When he's viable, it is key, but sadly, just a little bit of scaling and changing of the abilities did not make him viable enough to cut into these higher tiers. Next, we're going to have Satrana, also a hero that got buffed. Still not campaign viable, but SI allows her to cheat death and life leech away all her issues as she takes less damage from enemies that are above her in health. So a very strong signature item for a hero that would be otherwise completely underwhelming, as she cheats death kind of like a Brutus mechanic, but a little bit more reliant on her not being busted down, allows her to activate her ult instantly. She's going to benchmark at 30. Next, we're going to have Antandara. Antandara is a very special kind of Mauler hero where she has a lot of regeneration on her. She has healing and better attacks as she scales, and she can work good, but she does get burst at those high deficits, also preventing her from scaling up. And next, we're going to go into the next tier, underwhelming signature items for average heroes. This is going to be heroes that are either average or a very specific niche. So, first we'll look at Brutus. Brutus fits right here. He restores health after last gasp when he doesn't die, increases the duration of last gasp, and gets a shield. He's used for damage immunity, so he usually is positioned in those very offensive kind of front lines, which means that the shield alone won't be enough, healing more won't be enough, but the extension is fine. So it's going to be an underwhelming SI, kind of fine as its use into a very niche hero. Next we have Skriath, the chicken. His signature item and furniture 9 out of 9 are both very slow. His 3 out of 9 was supposed to be slow with his ult, but it's used for burst, allowing Aaron to pull. So what it does is it has this sandstorm damage as it adds damage to the rest of his abilities. Sandstorm does passive damage, reducing percentage based off the enemy scaling, which could be very good if he would survive to those stages, but in most sets where he's used best, because he's so squishy, he's bursting with his furniture. 3 out of 9, allowing Aaron to pull up to 5 enemies very fast. He's gonna benchmark at 30, just like Brutus benchmarked at 20 for the last gasp duration. Nemora is gonna be benchmarking at 1, and the reason she's gonna be benchmarking at 1 is that her SI is just underwhelming, gets extra healing on basics, but its scaling isn't good enough. She's more useful buffing ally healing, doing her own healing. The SI does not add enough on top of that. And next we'll have Skreg with very special furniture, and it's gonna benchmark here in 30. He plays on his energy usage, all these different abilities that allow him to use this ult without generating energy and allow him to do so earlier. So he's used for his furniture most of the time, allowing enemies to invade. But if his furniture is useful for you, and if you want his SI to be effective more, you'll probably want it at 30 while he'll do it quick and be able to seriously tank damage, as he ults very fast and he ults for a long time. Next, we'll have Bellinda benchmarking at 30 just as well. Another one of those heroes that does start as a carry and later becomes a buff hero with her crits. Is a crit buff. Her damage is not enough for her on the signature item. She needs to ult to make a difference. But energy regeneration on the plus 30 is the best part of it. Sometimes, just sometimes, allowing her to ult, and sometimes, just sometimes, allowing her to make a difference. I'm going to take a quick glass of water here. And next, we're going to go on average signature items for average heroes. And we're going to start with one of my personal favorites that not many people know about, and it's going to be Ulmus. Ulmus goes in here and part of 7 heroes benchmarking at 30. Buff self-heals with his signature item, and then his ult provides shields. Ult self-heals a lot, so the ult's benefits from the signature item, as well as the team buff that allows him to keep up those shields, heal his allies, and support the team. Next, we're gonna have Nakaruru. Nakaruru, a very special hero that makes her attacks faster through her signature item, benchmarking at 20. The plus 40% attack speed is unheard of. Imagine plus 40 haste, but it's not exactly that. It stacks to impressive amounts of damage. It also makes her stack energy and CC faster. She could scale to stun on her ult, but the plus 20 is where she benchmarks, getting extra attacks. It also enables her animation to go faster, so she does all of her kit much faster. Next, we're going to have Hendrik benchmarking at 1, giving him extra max health at the start of the match and adding percent of his health to his damage, a very special mechanic, but you don't still use him for damage, and the healing is scaling off of the scaling of the health that you get, so it's kind of a thing where people think 1000%, but it really does not amount to that much. Still good to keep him tanking for your allies though. Next, we're going to have Oden benchmarking at 1. So Oden lets him counter enemy ults with his signature items using the Void, which deals damage and generates energy for him. And even scales to let him do that as he does. Isn't that a cool mechanic? Sadly, no. Since he doesn't get plays in Seirus Graveborn, he's usually his own carry. So if he dies and he doesn't kill something right away, it's over. And the Void's just not going to be what does it most of the time. It doesn't make a difference for his campaign usage, so he's going to keep this benchmark at 1, allowing him to sometimes use that signature item. Ukyo is a very special hero, indeed one that is pay to play. After his ultimate, he gets CC immunity, attack and life leech once per battle, benchmarking him at 1, scaling up to 2 usages per battle and higher stats. Now, many people are sleeping on his furniture, which in tandem with this could make him such a viable carry. If you have him, take a look at what his furniture does. You'll see what I'm talking about. He's mostly used in Gwyneth sets for now, which makes his signature item average, not much more, not much less. Next, we're gonna have one of our favorite maulers, Khasos, ranking up here. You'll see him benchmark at either 1 or 30. Let me explain myself. It was not obvious what this is about. I actually can talk to my guilders, Idakiller, Carl, and Arctic, about this, and it's really about how you use him. If you use him as a carry, the axes make him much more consistent at plus 30. At plus 30, he can keep those axes going, healing off of the axes, which makes him a great mauler carry. But in the campaign, sometimes, and most of the times, you'll see him be used in mauler sets for the life leech, and in those cases, it's just not gonna cut it. It's just not gonna be enough, so you just want to have it at 1 and have his life leech be the main point. Kelthur benchmarking at 1 is going to be the last hero of this category. Also one where the guildies had a tough decision. He could be used either as a late game carry or as a controlling of positions kind of hero. So his attack rating scales up for each ally that dies. Don't sleep with this, could scale up to 120 and even further than that. It also scales up his life leech and could scale up a lot of attack, but it's only useful if you use him as a carry. For example, if you're using him in one of those defensive, offensive Thorn sets, when he is just for positions playing defensive, it just won't add much to him if he does more damage because you're just relying on that Thorn. Next, for good signature items for average heroes, we'll have 5 heroes in this category, and we're gonna start with Fox, who benchmarks at 20. Grants defense and CC immunity to all allies that have high health. An incredible overlooked SI that makes him a very viable pick. Really actually close to niche carving because people are sleeping on it. CC immunity is huge, and defense those numbers, it's higher than a poison bonus. It's just one hero that's on top of everything, a light bear. Next, we're gonna have Mizoth. Mizoth had a very nice change recently. Not many people know about it. He's also gonna benchmark at 20. Transfers the damage to the captured enemy and starts the fight with high energy. Only tanky once he ults, is not that tanky before that, but at plus 20 though is effective enough for most campaign levels, so once he ults he's good enough, and he plays as a support, so you want to level him up to about signature item 20. You could invest in him up to 30, but I believe 20 is that benchmark sweet spot. Lucius is an interesting hero, and I really want to expose you to something that not many people know. He's gonna benchmark at 30 because reducing energy regeneration and later clearing buff from the enemies that get knocked back is a good way to ensure if you put him in the backline that heroes will not have those buffs you don't want them to have. He has a great signature item, making a hero that you could trust to quickly debuff threatening enemies consistently, but you gotta know to put him in the backline. He does look like a frontline hero, and he does work like a frontline hero, but sometimes Lucius backline could be exactly what you need. Next, we will have Titus, who benchmarks at 30, and I have a very special comment about Titus. It makes him mitigate damage and eventually CC immune when he uses Savagery. Now note that Savagery is the ability that triggers when the enemy health is lower than 50% and he starts chasing them. So that's what makes Titus weak in some matchups. For example, healers like Thane can really annoy him and not let him trigger, what makes him so strong. But if he does, this is where you use him in the campaign. Remember, campaign, you decide which set goes against which set. If he does, it makes him a really strong carry that can cycle these. It makes very good health for him, really enabling him on top of his team buff that gives movement speed. A great Mauler hero. Not much competition for Maulers, but a good Mauler hero to keep in mind that has a strong item that allows him to mitigate 70% of the damage and get CC immunity. Next, we'll have Anarchy, the last hero here that's also going to benchmark at 20 like some of these heroes. Great signature item, make him scale up in attack and defense, scale him to recover HP, and making him CC immune makes him useful tank when you put him in the front line. Partially used for his aura, so the signature item makes him a tank alongside the aura, kind of a second role that's good to have on Anarchy once you use him. Next category is going to be Niche Carving SI. This is the ones you really want to look out for, and we're going to have 6 heroes here. And we're going to start with Gorvo. Gorvo is going to benchmark at 10. A very unique hero with high skill ceiling. Increases shield efficiency, eventually converting Gorvo's shield to energy and recovers health while it's active. Now the reason he benchmarks at 10 is that he makes shields take less damage, and shields are very common in the meta. They work for Thane, sustenance, the likes of Ulmus, like all kinds of shields that you see in the game get so much stronger just if you put this guy in, and that's a good hero to grab plus 10 and adding him an additional niche separate to the one he had before with the knockups and stun locks that he has. Next, we have Seirus plus 30. Seirus recovers his own health after tenacity can no longer be stacked, eventually recovering health to allies as well, making him a complete spiraling hero comparable to Thane in some senses, making him much stronger than he was, allowing him to fit into completely different compositions, supporting his team as he does his thing. Isolde is also going to be benchmarking at 30 just like Seirus. A certain case that's somewhat similar to Seirus in that he takes reduced damage while ult is up, healing himself and scaling to become CC immune while it runs. So when he has full furniture, he's a great own carry. He can have his own show. CC immunity makes him so much more consistent. When he's 1v2, 1v3, he can face all those heroes and stay in the fight to eventually scale and grab those wins. Now, the next one is going to be one I'm not sure many of you knew, somewhat controversial, but I want to talk about it in regards of endgame campaign. Cecilia going to benchmark at 1. Recovering energy and health when she kills with her ult is huge. Naturally, she invades and can grab quick kills, enabling comps like Celestials and Hypogeans in the late game because she recovers energy across the whole team, making those ultimates stack up, getting rid of those threats and placing those shields on the ground, those auras that make her, due to being a consistent substitution there, being able to regenerate energy. It lets her get this prestigious position on the list because her signature item is what really makes her viable in Celestials, Hypogeans, and makes her substitute those heroes that you really want for other sets. This set is also better than PvP. Next, we're going to have Torne, which is going to have 2 benchmarks, 1 and 30, and you probably predicted this if you know Torne. Torne increases his health and makes it so he can take limitless damage, becomes immune to death while he ults. He cannot die while he channels energy. This makes his niche much better at signature item 1 and enable him to work against completely different sets at plus 30. So Torne, one of those heroes you want to keep an eye for and pay attention to his signature item. Sometimes you'll want to take it higher, but note, in endgame campaign, offensive Torne drops off in viability. I know some people in chapter 31 and 32 might not believe this because they see him all around replays, but around 5 set meta, 6 set meta, 4 set meta, consistency beats the thing that Torne offensively does. He is used defensively though. Next, we're gonna have Numisu, one that also many didn't know about. Places totems on the field in the beginning of battles and scales up to buff their health. The totems in the beginning of battles enable him. They slow certain front lines enough for his heals and haste to be valuable for certain teams. He's the best hero that does this. The only valid comparison that comes to mind is Solise, but he supports so much better, so his signature item really enables him putting those totems on the ground and allowing him to get to the point in the game where him and his totems really stack up to be able to beat campaign levels. Recently used him, absolutely love it. High skill ceiling. Next is gonna be average signature items for those meta heroes. We're gonna start with Aziz. Aziz benchmarks at 10, just like Numisu. So Aziz benchmarks with his basic ability is initially stunning enemies on low health, very useful on this one. Next, he's going to increase the duration and slightly the damage of his flames. Now note that his flames do not do much damage. Extra 1 second could be very impactful when it's the difference between ulting or not, but the damage on the flames not that much. Note that his ult not only enables his Horrify that cancel enemy ults, but it also enables him to make the team take less damage. A very unique ult that's worth reading. So Aziz at 10 benchmarking, because increasing the duration significantly at his plus 30 is not always worth it, counting on the fact that he'll mostly be at those energy set heroes using his Horrify. So Aziz is usually based on energy, and he'll often ult more than once every 7 seconds, making the plus 30 not always worth it to grab. Plus 10 is where I think is the best value. Next, we're going to have twins. Twins have various buffs. You can just read it. I'll put it right here. All kinds of interactions. The last one increasing damage, which they don't have much of. They have low damage, but the buffs and stats are good to have. So plus 20 on twins is going to be the benchmark. Lorsan is also going to claim this spot. Not very useful with his signature item, increasing haste and making him immune to damage. This set is usually where he's used. It's not about him staying alive. It's not about him grinding haste. It's about him doing his one thing that he does, which is gale forcing away and sometimes making the ultimates deal a lot more damage. So Lorsan plus 20 makes a very special effect that will be the benchmark, but sometimes you could just get away with just plus 1 and just play through campaign. Ezio is going to be next, one of those heroes that a lot of people are still asking me about. Many forget his initial signature item level. Increases the execute thresholds for all enemies by 50, still limited by his max cap, but by 50%. Later he scales down to take 55% less damage and places a smoke bomb when he kills an enemy. Now he accumulates dodge as the fight goes on, so I don't think the smoke bomb is going to be that huge, countering it on when it's exactly placed. By that point you're probably winning, but taking 55 less damage is something that you can really appreciate when they do go through the dodge. So plus 20 is going to be the benchmark for him to be really, really efficient. Next is going to be a controversial one a little bit. No, people think she's higher. I think she's there because her signature item lets her impale when she sets up her ult. Adds life leech, eventually lets her execute enemies regardless of the health when the health goes low. So when her health goes low, she can execute enemies at any health, dealing lots of damage. Shines with their furniture. Good synergy there, making a very good use of her SI, fearing lots of enemies. But still, she's mostly used for the initial CC. Other heroes instead of Skreg are responsible for those kinds of niches, so not completely synergistic with the hero as the way it's currently used, but definitely could be subjected to meta change and pulled up, and definitely a great signature item to keep in mind when she does let us execute. For the next category, we'll have good signature items for meta heroes. This is going to be 11 heroes. Now, while I take a sip of water, I'll let you think which of these go in the good and which of these go in the required. So we'll go over 11 heroes that I think fit in the good. And we're going to start with one of my favorite girls, Athalia. Athalia benchmarking at her plus 30, increasing her defense based on her offense, which stacks with her defense increasing ability. And Max has a passive making enemies lose health, but this is PvP relevant. What's most relevant in the campaign is where the Max, the plus 30, makes all enemies regenerate less health, so this adds counter healing to her. Very crucial, almost even niche carving that makes her burst through the thing and not be disturbed as much by enemy healing, which puts enemies on her par where she really, really excels. Next is going to be a special one that my guildie has very insisted to claim the position. She's gonna benchmark at 5. Her great signature item working with the furniture to stack defense debuffs and enemy teleports. It could be used at 30, but the reason we say 5 here is that she benefits a lot from the movement speed. The furniture synergizes great with this, but just the 10% also makes it great. The very good part about her is not her signature item that could make enemies attackless, but the furniture that makes her almost invincible. So in some teams, their signature item is going to be very crucial, but it's not as crucial as that top tier, which we will look at in just a second. And she does benefit from that haste, which is why we say 5, but feel free to also take her to 30 if you use her often. Next one is going to be Orthos. He also goes here and he's going to be benchmarked at 30, reducing enemy haste, scaling up to stunning them if they stay within his vicinity for 6 seconds. Works great in the Skreg sets that he fits in. Next we're going to have Flora. Now ask yourself, what does Flora's signature item does? Let me pop it up over here. It reduces enemy haste when the bird crits, eventually scaling to reduce the bird cooldown. Reducing the bird cooldown makes the biggest difference in our usage. It also gives haste, and this is important. It's not much, but it's one of the only ways in the game to buff Flora's haste through her interaction immunity. Next we'll have Estrilda. Benchmarked in either 10 or 30, it depends, it's really up to you. Flora 20 real quick, makes Estrilda mitigate damage when she's alive in the front line, so it scales with requiring any living frontline hero to work. She works great in Gwyneth sets, but she could work in a variety of other sets I've seen her do well, so a really good signature item that makes all allies take less damage. I'm waiting for some people to realize how good she is, for example, into some Silas Grave 1 compositions. Really a strong buffing hero. Next, we're going to have another slightly controversial one, Zorath. Some people are going to ask me why he's not up there, and you may have thought so too, but remember, this isn't PvP. It doesn't have to have this used. So it increases his damage when he's ahead of his enemy, often happens in burst comp, eventually allows him to ignore defense rating, which is the reason he's benchmarked at 30, and immunity effect. He could also work out by spiraling out his buff and sustaining, but this opens an avenue for him to carry, which means it's a very strong signature item to have, putting him on the verge of tearing up over here. Next up, we will have Mihira. Mihira also not in the top tier because she could work without this, but she recovers health when allies lose it. Very useful with her minions, and she scales to recover energy. Very big, making her ult more, do more damage, enabling her God Company cycle to be much stronger with the other heroes, especially when you have a Ziz with her, making it so there are 2 cells hypos generating energy together. Next, we're gonna look at Gwyneth. Gwyneth is going to be benchmarked at 25. It increases her damage based when she is in close proximity to allied heroes. It also scales to create a clone that fires arrows quickly when she or an ally in her close vicinity ults. So she gains important haste 25, and she gains this incredible ability at 20, making her much stronger. Keep an eye out for Gwyneth and gets her to 25. The extra haste is something that not many people know, but if you do, you will get ahead. Sophia, gotta be 10. A good hero overall, but a very slow signature item, ramping up her damage mostly for her ult. Plus 30 allows her to use Scattering Bolt, stunning enemies and doing AoE damage instead of her basics. Now she benefits the most from the damage scaling on the ult. She usually does not get to the point where she is at max scaling, so she's going to benchmark at 10 because at that point you're already scaling pretty well, so she'll probably work into most comps. The extra investment is usually not worth it because the fights do not remain that long. Next, we're going to have Rosaline, a very flexible hero, benchmarked at 20. Allows her buff allies with their attack and defense, scaling to crit and dodge as well at max signature item. Plus 20 has the best scaling in our attack and defense, very high at plus 30%. A very flexible signature item. I personally have it at plus 30 because it could do so well for so many different carries. Next, we'll have Aaron. Did you know that he's down here? No, he's not at the top. And some players forget this too, but this is what enables Aaron, the signature item, to freeze when he ults, which means that most campaign Aarons will not do that. They can pull you, but they will not freeze you when they ult you. So it scales up to increase the ult damage on frozen enemies and eventually doubles the freeze length. So strong, but still not cutting it. The freeze makes him a very consistent burst carry that's useful even at high level deficits. However, dropping in on plus 1, I would say, might knock him half the way up. Now this is gonna be the 9 winners. 9 heroes where I say it's required signature items for required meta heroes. And let me explain them one by one. And I'll go in a very specific order here because these are important to me. Starting from Damon. Damon fits here as one of the best signature items in the game, allowing Damon to steal attack and defense, eventually permanently gaining them. Now, note how his plus 30 makes his blood shield longer by about 30%. So, that's so crazy. He's benchmarked at 30 for this. It's applied for his blood shield skills as well as his special blood shield ults. So when the ult triggers blood shield, allowing to mitigate more damage for all allies, that gets more length too for all the enemies that have their health stolen. And he eventually, if he manages to kill, steals that attack. So the extra time really makes him viable, and he's already a very strong campaign hero. Next, Feral benchmarked at 20. Feral, this gives him his team utility. He reduces enemy healing and damage significantly. Spirits take a while to stack, so the plus 30 isn't always necessary, not making that big a difference, but good to have. However, Feral really countering enemy teams since day one of his signature item. Next, Arthur, 30 is going to be the benchmark, going here. Arthur, an incredible signature item, providing so many things, providing himself buffs, team buffs. I've seen like abilities that are on their own separate signature items. So you could see him increasing rallied attack speed as well as crit ratings at very high numbers, 50-30%, and also scales up to provide Arthur healing, incredible healing, and CC immunity as long as he has those valid allies. So keeping valid allies behind that guy when he has plus 30 makes him invincible and the team so much stronger. What a dimensional hero. Next, Laika. Not many people understand this, but let me explain it. She enables those sets more than the signature item. I would take Laika to 20 before I would take Aaron up from 1 to 20, because her bonus is just so huge. It increases ally accuracy, but at plus 20 it makes her so all non-mage heroes can deal up to 20% more damage. In the campaign, this is used carefully. It makes it so most of the damage is done by those heroes, making her a much better buff hero, stacking with her throw fragility, making her deal cumulatively more damage. So this is really crazy, and if you have it, your heroes will stack in ways you will not predict. So very strong heroes enabling all these burst comps. Khazard is going to be one of those heroes. Again, not all people understand it, so let me explain it. Benchmarking at 30. Now, this is also might be controversial, but Khazard is a top meta hero. He is definitely the top 3 sets. I also ranked him that way in the tier list. That's largely enabled by his SI 30. As squishy as he is, it increases his team CC duration and freezes enemies for up to 3 seconds on crits. Those are basic attacks that you could buff with stuff like I and Arthur. There are required goodness that he enjoys to really scale up his ult. This is what makes him excel working with the likes of Tassi and Mehira. So you really want that plus 30 to have this guy carry you in the very late game. 2 more, 3 more. And last one I'm going to keep for best, and we're going to go with Wukong. Wukong, benchmarked at 20, sets protective shields around Wukong and his clones, enabling him to dodge incoming damage that's over 10% of their total. Very useful in the campaign, making him almost unkillable in certain matchups, having him apply that direct CC while spiraling the damage with all those clones that become so hard to kill. Virtue of this signature item. His furniture also very strong, so keep an eye for Wukong. Next, not all people understand this, and I'm gonna set the record straight here. Thane is good. Her signature item is amazing. Let me explain this in depth. Thane gets a huge 20% attack rating and 40% defense rating every time so she is reborn, but that's not the reason we're going to talk about her today. It's incredible, but her benchmark for me is going to be 30, because on top of that, she recovers 400 energy when she is reborn. Let that completely get in your head. Let me also make the case that when she's reborn is where you want the energy on her the most. The team hasn't been healed while she's dead, so having her consistently all fast when she's reborn is such a big buff, makes her so much more consistent, healing the whole team right away after coming back to life, making the enemies just unable to pierce through your team, making her so much stronger. And the big buffs on big heroes make it at this spot on the list, but I wanted to keep the best. for you, for last, we're gonna look at Rowan. That's right, boys. I want to keep it. The guy who defined what signature items are. My personal favorite, and the one who I prioritized way before it was globally loved because I'm that amazing. Rowan is going to be benchmarked at 30. Let's talk about him quick. Very simple signature item, most of you know this. Setting up a mana potion to be drunk by allies when they reach 600 energy, scaling up to 400 energy so those allies instantly ult when they get to 600. This enables so many comps and making him such a great support. Fits onto most setups, PvE and PvP because of this incredible stuff. He enables the god comp, he can enable Aaron, he can enable Safia, he can enable anything you can think of. And keep this in mind, this refreshes every time heroes drink his potions as long as he stays alive. And Rowan is tanky hero, dodgy hero, immune hero that refreshes this potion fast, so it allows him in the campaign where the enemies do so much damage to have, by this virtue of the SI alone, signature item alone, consistently generate over 1000 energy through match, and sometimes much more. And it's not going to be just 1000 energy, it's going to be exactly where you need it, so the heroes that receive it instantly ult, unlike Rosaline where sometimes you just buff and sadly it falls short. So the best signature item in the game is going to go to Rowan, and he even outclasses all of these. If I had one tier up, he would go over there. Alright, and I'm Linker. I hope this helped you. I hope you learned something, and I hope this was useful for you. I hope you'll come back to this when you come to priorities. And of course, I'll leave the template down in the description so you can make your own decisions. And I'd like to especially thank my guildies for sticking through with this and really consulting with me on this. So that's going to be Carl, Alchemist, it's going to be Idakiller and Arctic, who were with me there through the hard moments of making this. And with that, I've been Linker, and thank you.